Welcome back to day 4 of the SolarPower Summit about solar investment opportunities in sub-Saharan Africa. This day is supported by Get Invest, a European program to mobilize renewable energy investment in decentralized segments in Africa and around the world. And in today's side event, we are going to look into 6 interesting sub-Saharan African markets. And in this session, which is the first deep dive session, we will be looking into Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. But let me first introduce myself. My name is Máté Heisz. I'm head of international cooperation at SolarPower Europe, and it is my pleasure to be the host and the moderator of today's discussions. And it is my pleasure to introduce the speakers of the first deep dive discussion. Our first speaker will be Ricardo Costa Pereira, President of the Mozambican Renewable Energy Association, AMER. Welcome, Ricardo. He will be followed by Isaiah Nyakusendwa, Chairman of the Renewable Energy Association of Zimbabwe. Welcome, Isaiah. Thanks for accepting our invitation. And last but not least, the third presentation will be held by Geoffrey Kaila, the Chairman of the Solar Industry Association of Zambia. Welcome, Geoffrey, and thanks to all our speakers for having accepted our invitation. So before handing it over to Ricardo, let me just remind you that there will be a panel discussion and a Q&A after the 3 input presentations. So we would already like to encourage you to go to sly.do, enter the code #SolarPowerSummit, and then submit your questions. Please feel free to submit questions already during the presentations. We will collect them and then we will discuss them with the speakers after the presentations. So we have reserved 90 minutes for this session. The first half of the 90 minutes will be dedicated to the input presentations, in which the speakers will walk us through the latest developments and most important aspects that define the renewable energy sector, and in particular the solar sector in their respective countries. And in the second half of the session, we will have the panel discussion with the speakers and also the questions and answers. So much as an introduction from my side. And with this, I invite Ricardo to activate his webcam, join me here, and walk us through the most important developments in Mozambique. Welcome, Ricardo. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Pereira, and I am the president of the Mozambique Renewable Energy Association. First and foremost, thank you very much for SolarPower Europe for this opportunity to be able to present. And also a big welcome to my colleagues. When we were given this challenge, let's say, to present, I really thought about how do we make this, and SolarPower Europe did a great task in challenging just to not give just the basic information, but to really bring about slides that were interesting, slides that would give you information, and slides that would definitely present Mozambique as a go-to country for solar businesses. So I hope that in my presentation I am able to bring that across. And I will. So obviously my first 2 slides, I want to introduce to you what the association is about. And hopefully I will. Okay, here we go. So AMER, as we the short name for it, which is the Mozambican Renewable Energy Association. It's the first business association dedicated to renewable energy in Mozambique, and we've made it across. So it's technology antagonist. So we represent all technologies. The aim of it and our main objectives are definitely to act as a common voice for the sector. we obviously want to promote renewables as renewable sources, as sustainable development. Mainly and foremost, we want to be a bridge between political decision bodies, the economic decision bodies, and also the social decision bodies, and foremost to promote and develop this wonderful technology, which is renewable energies. Secondly, I'll give you key data on Mozambique. So the most recent census that was done 2 years ago, we are almost 30 million people, of which the urban population is still below 40%. It's a huge country, a significant. So, and the business languages are both official language is Portuguese, but the business in Mozambique is both conducted in Portuguese and English. Democratic Republic. I've put there that little box to give you an indication of what the currency exchange rate is at the moment, and that was kind of updated this week. And to say that over the last 16 years, so basically from 2000 to 2016, as a country, we've enjoyed significant growth rates. That's 7% of GDP over the last 16 years. That has really been outstanding, and it's due to a number of factors, but also for foreign investment and the recent discovery and the growth of both the mining and the hydrocarbon reserves, which are significant even from a world standpoint of view. Since 2016, the economy has struggled. We've been hit by 2 climate disasters, bringing very much to the forefront of Mozambique what climate change is and all the aspects that it can bring and the devastation that it can bring. We've also had a debt crisis regarding to hidden debts. We have also hit in the country, and most recently, obviously COVID-19, right? IMF still projects a stable. So we since 2016 we have remained at 2.2. 2020 looks like we will remain, and then picking up even despite COVID-19, and looks like we may pick up by 2021 to back to 4.7 growth. The government's priority has been absolutely to pursuit of the reconstruction efforts that both cyclones caused. They caused devastating. Had a devastating effect, and also in the medium term, looking at fiscal consolidation and also debt reduction. There's a project also to create a sovereign wealth fund fueled by the large hydrocarbon revenues that we have, and this could definitely improve the country's resources and what we have to manage it. So that's Mozambique in a nutshell. In fact, I am struggling to go to the next slide. Okay, here we go. So overall, the energy sector, what does it look like? We have energy infrastructure both on grid. We're looking at large hydro, historical from the colonial back days. It's called Kaura Bassa. 2,750 megawatts. We have thermals. We have of IPPs that are doing gas power plants, and we have import. Our electrification rate is still low. We're still at 38%. That means that for us is specifically as a renewable energy association, we look at that number as an opportunity. So there's a significant opportunity there for off-grid for the electrification rate that's coming. In terms of key legislations and around the energy sector, there are many. I've put there what I believe are the pillars, which is the electricity law that is currently being revised to include renewables and to include a number of aspects. A very recent national electrification strategy that has renewable targets very much in place, and also an energy sector master plan that plots the way forward until 2043. And then we were asked to both present the energy mix and the key stakeholders, and I thought instead of just Speaking to him, I'll just put this graph up, which demonstrates that, as a typical of a developing African country, we're largely our energy mix is still largely based on biofuel. We do have, however, oil, which comes from the imports, natural gas, the hydro. That hydro represents the large dam that I've spoken about, and also small reserve of coal coming in. You will look at that, and that was 2016. You will look at that now more recently in 2019. Our first on-grid power plant of 40 megawatts solar has come onto the grid. So the renewables are going to start getting a significant share of that energy mix. In terms of key stakeholders, we have I've very simplified this. But please do feel free to reach out to us should you need more information. But this is a very simple diagram of who is there. But there's the government of Mozambique, which is composed by MIREM being the Ministry of Mineral Resources and Energy, REAZ, which is the agency of the regulator for the energy sector, EDM, which is our public utility, FUNAI, which is the Fund of Energy, and has historically been dealing with a lot of the rural electrification and IPPs. I've put there on the side development partners and international finance institutions, which have been key for the energy sector, and they have been supporting the government since the beginning. And they've always been a crucial part of our energy framework. We look at the potential. So an atlas was done by the Fund of Energy that looks at the renewable energy potential. And I think it's suffice to say that Mozambique has tremendous potential. And we're seeing that become real both as projects move along. But you will see there's a total of over almost 8,000 megawatts of potential that could come simply from renewable sources. The latest developments we've seen are both on the first and the second one, which is solar and hydro. More recent developments on wind, and I'll speak those about a little bit later on. But that's the energy potential that we have for the entire country. Business models. What do we have there? What is happening in Mozambique? So as mentioned, we have on-grid tiled large scale. We have existing and in operation. We have hydro. We have solar. Signed PPAs, concession agreements. Yesterday was not yesterday. On the 30th was also a landmark for the energy sector, where 3 solar plants also signed their PPAs. So the operations are, and they're foreseen to construct in the next 2 years. And there's also projected large wind, solar plus storage, and also geothermal. In terms of the off-grid projects, we have companies operating in solar home systems. There's a large number of companies. I guess there are 4 main players, and between those 4 main players, there's more than 50,000 systems already installed and operating. Mini grids, both existing and operational. They're mostly government owned, and obviously there's other appropriate technologies. There's clean cooking stoves. That has been one of the landmarks of the renewable energy sector. It was one of the first legislations that came through. Was the biomass and biofuels strategy, and that business has been flourishing as well. In terms of upcoming developments and what may interest this audience, so how do I get into Mozambique? There's a number of upcoming tenders, programs, both on grid. So as I mentioned, on the 30th, PROLED, which is the renewable energy large-scale auction system, has just been launched. For 3 solar plants and 1 wind. There's Get Fit Mozambique. So Get Fit Mozambique is structuring, and I'm sure my colleagues will speak later also of Get Fit Zambia and the success that has been there. So it's also coming to Mozambique, and also IFC from the World Bank is putting together a solar program. Off-grid, we have, and I don't need to mention all of them, they're there. but there are significant programs that have been put together to support the off-grid market in Mozambique. These are going to be focused on a number of technologies, also on mini grids. Most of them have been launched, and I do encourage you to reach out to us. We can put you in contact. Some of those tender windows are now open, and looking for companies to come in. So it's an exciting time. It's definitely an exciting time in terms of support that is there for tender programs. To this, there is also, and I would like to mention that our one of the biggest supporters that we as AMER is GetInvest, and through GetInvest, through other institutions such as Google, there's also schemes now to also support because of the COVID-19, so as in COVID-19 relief. So from our perspective as the association, it's although we do have a pandemic going on, the framework and the setting is there for companies to come in and do business in Mozambique. As I mentioned, in terms of upgrading regulations and reviewing, this revision of the electricity law has been a long time coming. We've recently seen a direct communication from the ministry to say that it's going to happen very soon, and this will further unlock the potential. It's going to structure very clearly the renewable energy sector. It's going to provide a framework also for mini grids. It's going to simplify a lot of the licensing processes. So it's really something exciting, and we've been working very closely with it, and we're looking forward for its approval in the near future. There's also a revision of the PPP law. A lot of the projects that are coming in, specifically the on-grid ones, need to adhere to the PPP law and the investment law. There's also a revision on that to simplify, to make it more accessible, to make it less strenuous to private sector. In terms of events this year, we as AMER have launched a series of webinars, and we've done webinars covering the impact of COVID. We've done webinars on CNI, and there's 2 more coming up where we will touch on mini grids and also IPP. So I will share my contacts, and I do encourage you to join the conversation. And I think it's been a very, very interesting conversations because we're including both. We're doing what AMER was supposed to do, whereas we're making the private sector, donors, and government be able to have a platform to speak to each other and discuss these issues. And I'm very proud to announce this report that we're writing with the partnership with UK DIT, which is a report on the impact of COVID and opportunities. So the challenges and opportunities that this has actually brought about for the Mozambique renewable energy sector. This was a challenging one where, as we said, so what is the advice? Think about what do you advise for people that are trying to come into Mozambique? So I would say, and I'm conscious that I'm running out of time, so I'll be quick here, but I would say the market is still in an incipient phase. Mozambique is open for business, and there's space for everyone. It's not a saturated market, absolutely. There is a financial sensitive context of the country, given to what I've explained earlier, but this also means opportunities. This means that there is that need. There's even more a bigger need to support government and to be able to create the energy sector as robust as possible. And my biggest advice, and I always say this, is doing business in Mozambique. Although we're now in a new era of doing everything remotely, but there's a very important part, which is localization of services, using local partners, being in country, speaking to people. I think that's very important, and probably it's doing business anywhere in Southern Africa, but especially in Mozambique, those localization programs. So my advice is sign up to AMER. We can provide guidance on members. We can support this discussion with government, and we've also cooperating with regional and global institutions such as SPE. And we're very proud to be here. So thank you very much. Obrigado.
Thank you, Ricardo, President of the Mozambican Renewable Energy Association, AMER. And indeed, on SolarPower Europe side, we're also happy to be a partner of AMER And it was really my pleasure to sign the Memorandum of Understanding between our associations last November. And I hope that we will have the chance to meet in person very soon again when the restrictions are over, hopefully quite soon. So we already have received a couple of questions, actually, very interesting ones. And I'm looking forward to the discussion with you, and of course the other speakers as well. But before that, we still have two presentations. The first one of which being done by Geoffrey Kaila, the chairman of the Solar Industry Association of Zambia. So Geoffrey, please join me here on the screen, and it's over to you. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Máté. Good morning, everybody. My name is Geoffrey Kaila from Solar Industry Association of Zambia. I'd like to thank SolarPower Europe for this opportunity to share the Zambian experience on renewable energy. So I'll go straight to the presentation. Okay, as the presentation comes on, I think we should just. Okay, just a moment. Okay, there we go. So that's my content for today. And these are the items that I'd like to share with everybody. First of all, I'll do an introduction of the Solar Industry Association. Then we'll look at the economic and political situation in Zambia. Then I'll share the energy sector. Sorry. Okay, I think we can go right through to the next slide. The economic, sorry, just the slide before. Just go back one slide. Okay. Then I'll discuss the renewable energy business models, also look at upcoming events in the energy sector, and also advice to new entrants. The Solar Industry Association, so just go back, go one slide forward. Okay, good. The Solar Industry Association was formed in 2017 and was officially launched last year. We have on our register about 40 companies registered. The objectives of the Solar Industry Association include working with government on policy. Seem to be slight problem there. Okay, we're good now. We also set out to promote best industry practices among our members and also inform the general membership of the Solar Industry Association as regards to opportunities in skills training and project financing. Okay, next slide, please. All right, current economic and political situation in Zambia. The economy is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. Zambia is one of the sub-Saharan countries that are highly urbanized. Zambia is the second largest copper producer in Africa after DRC. the country is highly dependent on copper, which generates 3/4 of the export earnings. And our GDP now is sitting at $23.34 billion. Just a slide before, the slides are changing automatically.
Geoffrey, the
Okay.
slide back in a second. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thanks. The country has a population of over 17.5 million people. Politically, Zambia has been a democracy since 1991. Since then, Zambia has been a relatively stable country, consistently and peacefully transferred power between parties now, the UNIP, MD, and the PF, and has since 1991 held 8 presidential elections, of which 6 were general elections. Okay, next slide, please.
Geoffrey, just as a side note, there seems to be a delay between what you see and what the audience sees. So the audience can already see the slide on the energy sector situation. So please go ahead.
Okay, great. The energy sector is made up of electricity, petroleum, and renewable energy. The primary energy sources include hydro, coal, biomass, petroleum, and solar. Electricity is produced from hydro sources, which is the major, then coal, HFO, which is heavy fuel, and diesel and solar PV. The pie chart there gives you a very good picture. So most of our energy comes from hydro, and we have coal, heavy fuel, diesel, and a very small portion from solar. I'd like to correct the situation here. The percentage of solar has gone up to 3% now. This was an old pie chart, so we are now at 3%. Moving on to the next slide.
Next slide is on.
Okay, next slide is on. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. I just need to synchronize what I'm seeing here and what's on the screen. The electricity subsector has the following major players. We have the Zambia Electricity Supply Corporation, ZESCO Limited. We have the Copper Belt Energy Corporation. We have Northwest Energy Corporation. And then we have a lot of independent power producers. That includes the HFO, the companies using heavy fuel. Then we have off-grid, mini-grid operators. That includes Muhanya Solar, which is the company I operate. We also have several other solar companies that are providing services in the solar industry. Zambia has about 2,981 megawatts of installed electricity generation capacity, of which 85% of this is hydro-based. National access to electricity is averaging about 31%, with 67% in the urban and 4% in the rural area. Due to climate change effects, hydroelectricity generation has reduced. The government, in line with the objective of the National Energy Policy of 2019, is targeting exploration of renewable energy in order to diversify the energy mix. So there's quite a lot of potential in Zambia for investment in renewable energy and electricity sector in general. Next slide. Okay, great. In order to diversify the Zambia's electricity generation mix and address the current power deficit the country has been experiencing over the past few years, the Ministry of Energy and KfW are implementing 120 megawatts of grid-connected solar projects under the GetFit program. This is now at a stage where the successful companies that were awarded the tenders are on implementation stage. I think there were 6 companies doing 20 megawatts each. The results of the GetFit solar tender set out a new benchmark for solar PV tariff in Zambia, with the lowest successful bid at $3.99 cents per kilowatt hour. So Ministry of Energy and GetFit Zambia are also finalizing requests for 400 megawatts of small hydro projects. The Energy Regulation Board, with the help of European Union, have developed and published off-grid mini-grid regulation under the increased access to electricity and renewable energy production. So under this project, the ERB, which is the energy regulator, has put out regulations for mini-grid development. These regulations are now out and published. So if there are companies that are hoping to develop mini-grids in this country, I think we have a fully regulated space in mini-grids, and the regulations are out there for everybody to see. The mini-grid regulations include grid encroachment in an event that the grid arrives in the area that you've developed your mini-grid. Then the regulations are clear on what should happen. They also include tariff approval, technical requirements of the 3 categories of mini-grids. There's below 100 kilowatts, up to 1 megawatt, and larger than 1 megawatt. So those are the 3 categories of mini-grids that can be developed in Zambia and are regulated. In 2019, under the World Bank Scaling Solar Program, 2 solar power plants were commissioned, one at 54.3 megawatts and the other at 34 megawatts. This program is targeting up to 600 megawatts. So there's a lot of potential there. Thank you very much. Utility scale solar projects, signing PPAs and O&M with the off-takers. This is one business model that is all over the world. Commercial and industrial solar developers have options to do lease, O&M, PPA, or outright purchase by the off-taker. Mini-grids use simple electricity supply agreements, which range from a kilowatt tariff or approved fee for service or fixed monthly charge, or indeed capacity demand in kilowatts. And some of them are using pay-as-you-go business model via prepaid meters. There are also solar home system distributors who are mostly using pay-as-you-go or rent-to-own or hire purchase business models. Upcoming events, Beyond the Grid Fund pre-qualification call is opened I think September, and it will be closing sometime in October. Power Africa off-grid project for rural health facilities announced awards in September. The 9 countries benefited in Africa. Alliance for Rural Electrification is also planning Energy Access Investment Forum in the first quarter of 2021. Hopefully, we'll have dealt with the coronavirus pandemic and we'll be able to witness this event here in Lusaka. In line with the energy policy that aims to promote cost-effective tariffs in electricity sector, the Energy Regulation Board launched the cost of service study to determine the actual cost of producing a kilowatt hour of electricity. So this study is ongoing, and after that, we are going to see exactly how much electricity should cost in this country. So this is a very encouraging undertaking that will make sure that the electricity that is produced is cost reflective. Also, the government launched National Energy Policy in 2019. This is a document that sets out government's intentions to develop the renewable energy sector and the energy sector in general. That's all I had to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Geoffrey, for this good overview. And I already have a couple of questions in my mind for you as well. So looking forward to the discussion. So bear with us, please. So now I would like to invite Isaiah Nyakusendwa, the chairman of the Renewable Energy Association of Zimbabwe, to join us here and to give us his presentation. Isaiah, over to you.
Thanks, Máté, for inviting us to present at this occasion. And we also thank the listeners for listening to our presentation. I'll quickly go through my presentation. My name is Isaiah Nyakusendwa, and I'm the chairman of the Renewable Energy Association of Zimbabwe. Just a brief background on our association. The Renewable Energy Association of Zimbabwe was set up in 2016, and it's a private sector body which is recognized by the authorities. When it was set up, the discussions that was taking place was that we had lots of players in the market, and there was need for us to have a coordinated approach in the way we do our businesses and also how we interact with the authorities. So we are registered a private voluntary organization, and we facilitate sustainable development and the uptake of renewable energy technologies. We have also been engaged in awareness raising, fundraising, advocacy, policy standards, and our membership currently stands at 24 companies. And the membership is across the technologies, basically solar PV, mini hydros, biofuels, vehicles, and waste energy. Right, on the Zimbabwe economic and political situation, I think a lot has been written about Zimbabwe as to what has taken place before, but I'll just concentrate on what is currently pertaining now and going forward. We are a peaceful country with obviously a history of economic and political challenges, but I think since 2018, the government embarked on a transitional stabilization plan, and now we are looking at a 5-year economic development plan, and there's been a repeal of certain laws and the ease of doing business. So some of these efforts that have taken place is that we now have, consistent current account surpluses and a reduction in our budget deficits, which has now gone down to single digits. Government has now also started investing on capital expenditure, on roads, dams, after years of neglect. And we also have now formal weekly foreign exchange auctions, which have seen also our currency kind of stabilize, after volatilities that have taken place in previous years. Currently, our exchange rate, according to the auctions, is now at 1 US is to 81 Zimbabwean dollars. And it has actually started appreciating on the back of supply of foreign currency to that market. So most companies have now started channeling money into the foreign currency market, the official one. And that has also started to stabilize or to reduce the inflationary pressures that were taking place. We also have devolution that's taking place with funds now being channeled to provincial areas to have development in those areas. And there was also recently the signing of the 3.5 billion deal to compensate the former commercial farmers for improvements, of which funding will be raised from international sources. Now, to the energy sector, we have an estimated population of 16 million people in the country, and 68% of those people live in the rural areas. Our national electrification access in Zimbabwe is estimated at 40%, of which 19% is for rural areas. In that regard, we have most of our people using fuel wood for cooking, lighting, and heating, and they use about 63% of that. And the total energy supply, obviously 70% comes from biomass. Our installed capacity is about 2,342 megawatts, of which 55% is thermal and 45% hydro. That has seen us having challenges, particularly on the hydro side, with climate change. We share a dam with our neighbors, Zambia, and the water levels went down, and we were not able to generate as much from a hydropower plant. Our generation is currently at a low level of about 823 megawatts against a winter peak demand of 1,600 megawatts and the summer peak demand of 1.4. What has happened in the past is that because of the shortages of foreign currency, we ended up having to load shed people in a size, making sure that we can utilize the power that is available. So that presents opportunities for also, solar projects in that regard. Our key stakeholders, we have the Ministry of Energy and Power Development, who are overly responsible for the sector. And then we've got the Zimbabwe Energy Regulatory Authority, which is the regulatory body that issues the laws. Then we've got the Zimbabwe Electricity Supply Authority, which is responsible for the distribution and transmission of power, and bodies like ZEDC, ZPC, from the power generation and the rural electrification all fall under those bodies. And then we've got the private sector as well on the IPP side. Right, renewable energy market overview. We have IPPs which have been licensed. As at the end of December, we had about 40 projects which had 1,190 megawatts. Operational of those projects are less than 10 megawatts, which again presents an opportunity for international investors to partner local partners here to be able to develop some of these projects. Technologies that are in use, we have mini and macro solar plants and feeding either to the grid or being off grid. So we have rooftops, solar projects, and we've got ground mounted couples, waste energy, and mini hydros and solar home systems as well. Then on the policy side, we have a national renewable energy policy, which aims to promote the uptake of renewable energy with targets that have been set in that policy of 1,100 megawatts by 2025. And then we've got our Electricity Act, which allows independent power producers to be able to also generate power. At the moment, our law says those that are in excess of 100 kilowatts, you have to apply for a license, but that is soon to be reviewed. There's talk of it being 1 megawatts or even going up to 5 megawatts. We also have a net metering act, which allows participants to be able to generate power from their rooftops or from, whatever source, and then feed in also to the grid. And the way it's working is that you basically will be banking your power and then drawing it when you require it. Then we've also got our national determined contributions, where we are saying we need to reduce our emissions by 33% by 2025. On the renewable, sorry, I think I've gone a little bit, On the renewable energy business models that are in place in the country is that we've got PPAs with exporting companies. I think what was happening in the past is that because of the foreign currency challenges, most private players ended up having to do PPAs with exporting companies so that you can make sure that you guarantee your payments from the exports that are generated. Then you've got also companies that are having power lease agreements with private sector companies as well. We also have got development partners who are partnering private sector to solarize, schools and health facilities. Then you've got also pay-as-you-go business models for solar home system. We've got a mobile penetration rate of more than 80%, which allows these new technologies to actually be implemented. Upcoming developments for renewables. We launched our renewable energy policy last year, which also talks about competitive bidding processes, because at the moment we have been on unsolicited bid process. So that brings also opportunities for investors there. We also have the net metering, which we are saying you can also participate in. There's also the review of duties, and then VAT on renewable energy products. Currently, there are policies that are being worked on energy efficiency and e-mobility, low emissions development strategy. And then there's also financial structures that are being worked on by the UNDP groups for solar for health, and also by bodies like UNESCO. I just need to mention that, for those that want to develop projects, big projects, you can actually also access the national project status that government offers that allows you to actually have also things like your duties being waived, and you can also access funding through the prescribed asset status platforms that are in the country. Advice to new entrants. I think it's important that we new entrants partner with local companies, and particularly work with the renewable energy associations. Zimbabweans are known for being entrepreneurial. At the moment, there's lots of activity in the renewable energy sector, with lots of companies that are operational. And I think it's important that one works with the Renewable Energy Association. It's also important to look at developing projects on a smaller scale and building them up as well, so that one can gain the market share. Because of the changing terrain that's taking place, we simply saying that to investors that you need to get a foothold also into the changing market that's happening in Zimbabwe. Right, I think, well, in conclusion, all I'm simply saying there's lots of opportunities for investors in the energy sector, particularly the solar PV sector. And we also have COVID-19 having highlighted the need for investment in energy, in health facilities, food production, and the issue of clean water. So there is opportunities that investors can also take advantage of in Zimbabwe. I think I just remain to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaiah. And thank you to all our speakers for these really good, concise, yet comprehensive overview presentations. So with this, I would now like to invite all three speakers to activate their webcams, because we will start the discussion. And I see, there we go. And I see, just as a conclusion, I think for the recommendations part, we specifically asked all of you to give some recommendations to potential new market entrants, and you did so, and thank you very much for that. And something I really want to highlight and emphasize is indeed working with local associations and local companies. You know, at SolarPower Europe, in our emerging markets work stream, and also in the context of our cooperation with Get Invest, we really have proof for you know, the use and the importance and the benefits of working with local associations. So it has really enormously facilitated getting engaged with local stakeholders, access to local decision makers, and understanding local markets. So just an emphasis on this on my side. And so we've already received a couple of questions through Slido, and I would like to continue to encourage the participants to submit questions. So on this slide, we can leave this slide for a couple of minutes. You see how to submit questions. So go to slide.do, enter the codes hashtag SolarPower Summit, and then you can simply send us the questions. But one of the questions that actually was already asked in a previous session of today's side event, but which we didn't have the time to discuss, is around COVID-19, and I would like to pass this question to our speakers today. So how has, you know, COVID-19 impacted the businesses, especially solar and renewable energy businesses in your countries, and has there been a significant impact, and also, you know, the economy in general, and how are your countries in general, but also your associations specifically addressing the challenges posed by COVID-19. And so I would like to ask all three of you to give a brief answer to this question, starting with Ricardo, and then Geoffrey and Isaiah. So Ricardo.
Right. You can hear me? All right. Thanks. That's a good question. I guess it's a topical question at the moment. As I mentioned, we are actually writing a report, so I've had the great benefit of being able to speak to various stakeholders, government, donors, and private sector, and the answer, the short answer is COVID-19 has created obstacles. It has not significantly damaged the sector. And obstacles, by obstacles, I mean specifically in Mozambique, there was an emergency plan put in place, but there was never an official lockdown. So although there is now restrictions, so the obstacles have been the global obstacles, you know, getting components, supply of components from around the world, transportation and so on. There's been delays on that, and logisticals in terms of the number of people can travel, where you can travel, and so on. But in terms of the business itself, and specifically, we did a summit, we did a webinar on solar home systems and companies. There's actually been more collaboration between companies to reach to those places. There's been a higher demand, and there's been relief funds. So the impact itself, it's still to be measured. I would say Africa as a whole, and I guess sub-Saharan Africa as a whole, has demonstrated that it's still a case study in terms of the number of cases and the impact that it's having. Businesses carrying on. So specifically in talking about Mozambique, there's definitely obstacles, but companies have adapted, government has adapted, the remote working remotely, being more available, and donors have responded very quickly with instruments and programs to support companies that have been struggling. So specifically for Mozambique, there's been more opportunities, I would say, so the balances is actually positive. So COVID-19 has actually brought about more positives than negatives, if I can say that.
Thank you, Ricardo. And this is really interesting to hear. So, Geoffrey, how is the situation in Zambia?
Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic has reduced revenue for private sector and government in general. Among the positives that have happened as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic was that the solar industry was declared as an essential service and business was able to go on. Zambia went through a partial lockdown for a couple of weeks, and we are now just opening up. Most sectors of the economy are not fully open, but government reacted very quickly, provided a 10 billion package to bring back businesses to life. The international community, via various agencies, also put out grants, and we're now seeing the effects of this intervention. And most of the solar companies in this country have not really felt the big impact of revenue loss and loss of jobs. But other companies have, like big mining companies, have had to close. Others have had to reduce their workforce. And well, so in a nutshell, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought good and bad, but average, I think the economy is still running, and there's been an impact, and we look forward to picking up the pieces and moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Geoffrey. Isaiah, over to you. What about Zimbabwe?
Right. Zimbabwe has also, like my colleagues have highlighted, they've been also been affected. We started off with a complete lockdown, and then we moved on to a partial lockdown, and right now we're now starting to reopen up the businesses of certain sectors which had not been opened. On the renewable energy sector, whilst the energy sector was declared an essential service, the renewable energy sector wasn't. So we had to lobby the government to also allow our people to be operational. That came in with limitations and restrictions. But thereafter, when we got businesses starting to open, we have had most of the companies now getting back to do their work. In as far as the impact is concerned, obviously, we could not reach some of the remote areas. Some of the projects that were being done were initially stopped, but then reopened. We have now a lot of activity from development partners who are also funding, sectors like health, like agriculture, like water, where we now realize the need for actually developing those sectors. In that regard, we have also lobbied our authorities to say, renewable energy is actually a tool that can be used to catalyze, the turnaround from the COVID pandemic, and it will have, a big impact in as far as the GDP is concerned. And I'm glad to hear that, to say that, a lot of some of those suggestions have been taken up in the national developmental strategy, and therefore presents an opportunity, particularly for solar PV, where we are saying, it could actually provide solutions, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's mining, whether it's, it's got a quicker turnaround than the other solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah, and that's actually very interesting to hear because you know the job intensive nature of renewables and solar in particular has really been a cornerstone of our advocacy strategy in Europe as well. And I think it's it's true globally that renewables should be used by governments to address the recovery and to ensure a green recovery during and post COVID-19. So another topic that I would like to propose to explore in this round is related to net metering, and some of you, if not all of you, mentioned in your presentations that there is already a net metering mechanism or regulation in place in your countries or in development. And so it would be really interesting to hear about that, about the opportunities linked to the business opportunities linked to net metering, and also about the details of how it is going to work. So will net metering enable grid feed-in, for example? So will it be on-grid, an on-grid scheme in your country, similar to Europe? What challenges are related to that, given the the relatively low electrification rates in your countries? And also a question that comes from the audience is related to administrative procedures around net metering and also other schemes, for example, CNI. Do you see any need for development on that front? So let's start with Isaiah. I know that there have been some developments around net metering in Zimbabwe.
Sure, thanks, Matt. The issue of net metering in Zimbabwe, we have got a regulation that was done way back, I think it was 2018. And it allows a participant, when we say participant, anybody who is whether a resident or industrial, commercial business, to be able to generate their own power and then be able then to feed that power to the grid. Obviously, there's a process that one has to go through, and one of them is you actually have to apply to the Zimbabwe electricity, transmission and distribution company, where upon them approving that you can actually do that, then you go through the commissioning process, obviously complying with all the requirements in SIAZ protection and issues like that. So what we have seen is a lot of publicity that is now being given, and the government actually also driving that as a strategy to say, if we can get power being generated by private sector players, we can also substitute the power that we either import or that we end up having to load shed people. And for those that can actually invest on their own, why not have that being done? As far as commercial projects are concerned, I think there's an area that the government has also been relaxing, where one is talking about, power generation for own use. So you have commercial businesses being able to then to set up their power plants and then being able to then use that power for themselves. And the requirements then don't become as rigorous as the ones that if somebody wants to feed into the grid, as it were. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaiah. Geoffrey, how about Zambia?
Zambia right now is developing net metering regulation. We are expecting that net metering will become a reality next year. Also, I think already what is happening is behind the meter connections. These are initiatives where you put rooftop solar and you generate for own use. Like shopping malls can do that. We've seen government institutions, we've seen private sector putting up solar for own use as grid connected, but these are behind the meter connections. So we're very hopeful that when the regulations are in place, the market will be open for net metering business.
And so, Geoffrey, just to give the question back to you, what are the next steps for the development of the regulation? How is your association involved in this process, and how long will it take, in your opinion?
We've been involved from the beginning, and we've had 3 consultative meetings. We've set the framework already. I think now we're just putting the meat into the regulations. We've had to briefly stop as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were trying to do online virtual meetings, but this has not happened. So we are hopeful that when businesses open and we're able to manage COVID-19 properly, I think real-time meetings will start, and we hope to conclude the regulations maybe in the first quarter of next year, and maybe somewhere in the second or third quarter of next year, we'll be able to open up the market for net metering.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Ricardo, any comments on your side around net metering from Mozambique?
Yeah, so I guess our situation is very similar to what Geoffrey has just explained for Zambia. You know, we're still not there. It's a reality that we've been debating. A while ago, we had feed-in tariff, renewable energy feed-in tariff regulation, but that was never promulgated. It was just a strategy. But at the moment, it's still not there. It may come in the review of the law. What we have seen, and again, very similar to Zambia, we have beyond the meter. So we have CNI that are the only requirement that obviously the public utility has is that there's no feedback into the grid. So there are isolated systems, but we've seen that from residential to commercial uses of solar rooftops, where companies are doing installations and some long-term savings by switching to renewables, to solar panels and battery systems. But yeah, that's what I can say on the metering scale. We are looking. As an association, we have been engaging with the task force of lawyers that have been tasked with reviewing the electricity law to ensure that option is there. And obviously, there's a mini grid toolkit in Mozambique that also takes into account what would happen should those go in front. What would happen? How would metering be done? How it would be regulated? So I can't say it is something in the near future. For now, we have large scale. We have completely off-grid systems. I think that's something that we will evolve to for sure.
Thanks a lot, Ricardo. Thanks a lot, all. Ricardo, I want to stay with you for a second, and I think this question will also be relevant for Isaiah. Ricardo, you mentioned in your presentation that the recent discovery of huge hydrocarbon reserves in Mozambique. How do you think does or will that affect the country's ambition in terms of renewable energy? And the question to Isaiah is also that, you know, we've seen increasing amounts of investment in coal in Zimbabwe, and so will that have any impact, any negative impact on the renewable energy sector? Ricardo, over to you.
Okay, thanks. And I think it's a very valid and an important question. Mozambique has, if I'm not, I don't want to say something that's out, but if I'm not mistaken, it's either the 4th or the 5th largest reserves in the world of natural gas. That's extremely tempting and in a lot of potential, energy potential for a country that needs to develop. So there's been put in place. There's this strategy. Government is doing its due diligence on how to explore those reserves, and also ensure that it's not simply extracted and exported. There's an LNG plant being built in Mozambique, bringing jobs and also stimulating the downstream market. It's a shift. So definitely plans had been, we also have significant reserves of coal. There's been a shift recently because of these natural gas resources. There's been a shift from the idea of producing electricity from the coal reserves to the gas reserves. So there's a saving there, I would say. But there's definitely a need to coexist. So it's not a one way or the other. Government has been very clear on that. There's a very good understanding that the energy matrix needs to be diversified. Coal, gas, and renewables need to play its energy, needs to play their part. But specifically for gas, and I was very fortunate to be able to accompany some of the webinars that have been happening also on the oil and gas. And we've seen Total, which is one of the companies that will explore these large reserves, basically being confronted with that. Europe, you're a European company. Europe is putting large targets on renewable and the green revolution. How does that now marry with you exploring hydrocarbons? And the answer there has been that there's an improvement in technology, so the technology being deployed there is going to be more efficient. There's also a transitional, so they're looking at where possible. Gas is going to be a major resource for us. It's going to be part of our energy mix, but where possible, be able to also boost renewables. So these companies are also looking at it where possible, electrifying through solar, through hydro, through wind. So and in the macro perspective, having these companies come in and invest in Mozambique and hopefully have a significant impact on our GDP would also allow for renewable companies to also come in. There's a path there for businesses to be made. There's going to be an increase in demand, and hopefully the renewable companies can come in and fulfill some of that demand with renewable supply. So I definitely do not see this as a one or the other. I think for Mozambique, we are in place to be a good case study on how these technologies will be able to coexist.
Thank you, Ricardo. Isaiah, would you like to comment on the new coal investments in your country?
Yes, please. Thanks. The issue there is that we need to look at also the historical development of our power generation, where coal has been used as a baseload in the country. But I think what's important is to notice the fact that there is also need to look at how we can rationalize all those coal plants as well. If one looks at some of those plants, 70 plus years, and they're old already. So the cost benefit analysis of having to maintain them might need to be looked at if one is looking at either substituting or replacing some of those. Then secondly, we're still also guided by our policies, which talks about 1,100 megawatts coming out of renewable energy into the energy mix, and equally the need to reduce carbon emissions. And what's good to note is also that we have noted recently some of the power projects being put on hold on the back of them being developed in national parks, as it were. So there is a conflict there in terms of developing the projects, in some of those areas. So I think at the end of the day, once one looks at the bigger picture as far as our power situation is concerned, there is need for the rationalization of the need for using coal. And I think renewable energy still presents, the quick and the fastest and the cheapest, let's put it that way, source of power generation. If one looks at the reduction in solar costs that have taken place over the years, I think it's going to have a bearing as we go into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. So I think after this higher level this discussion, a more political, strategic discussion, let's come back a little bit to the ground and on IPPs and the specific challenges related to renewable energy IPPs, independent power producers in your countries. And so, for example, I'm turning to Geoffrey now. So in Zambia, I'm aware that the currency, the Zambian currency, has depreciated significantly recently.
So sorry, Máté, I've lost you. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think we can't hear Máté for some reason.
Máté, we've lost you. Hello, Máté, can you hear me?
That site doesn't have internet.
Yes, I think it doesn't have internet. They will try to join your phone now. It will come back very soon.
Yeah.
It seems there was a technical issue on my side. Can you hear me again?
We can hear you now.
Yeah,
Very
sorry
clear.
for this interruption. There was an internet disconnection on my side. But I don't know to what extent, up to which point you heard my question. But I was just suggesting to move back to the topic of IPPs and developing renewable energy IPP projects in your countries. And so I was turning to you, Geoffrey, and addressing the challenge related to currency depreciation in Zambia. I hear there has been significant depreciation in terms of the Zambian currency, which of course makes it a bit difficult for international businesses in particular to do renewable energy IPPs in Zambia. So would you be able to comment on that, and what would be your advice to address this challenge?
Yeah, the foreign exchange pressure is quite big now in this country. I think the Zambian kwacha has lost about 8% of its value in the last 2 months. That's put a lot of pressure on people who are receiving revenue in kwacha and have to do business in foreign currencies. So you have to look for lots of kwacha to do business in foreign currency. So it's really bad. Everybody is adopting a wait and see situation, and we're just hoping that at a higher level, the Ministry of Finance is beginning to stabilize the kwacha. We were beginning to fear that the exchange rate would deteriorate further, but it's seeming to hold now, and we're hoping that things begin to reverse slowly.
Are there any specific measures that government is implementing in order to, to reassure international investors when it comes to the challenge of currency fluctuations?
Well, we're only beginning to see the effects now. I've not come across any specific measures that government has put in place, but I think, yes, they are addressing the current situation, and we are hoping that things will start to reverse.
Thank you. Ricardo, what's the situation in Mozambique when it comes to challenges related to IPPs, but also opportunities, of course?
Right. So on our side, there's also been a devaluation of the currency against the dollar. What we've seen from IPPs are both for one of the first specific solar plants, we had seen mechanisms against this foreign exchange risk. So where although PPAs are signed in dollars, they're still paid in the national currency. So we had seen some mechanisms there to kind of mitigate that foreign exchange risk. What we've seen at the moment is obviously from the government side, and especially from the central bank, some fiscal stabilization measures being put in place, and the dollar has kind of kept at about 70 for the foreseeable past and near future. But what we see, so I don't think there's any. What we've seen are there's no specific mechanisms from the government side, apart obviously from not for the energy sector in specific, obviously, but as an economy as a whole. What the energy sector has done is it has definitely looked at those PPAs to see ways in which that risk can be mitigated. And what we've also seen IPPs benefiting from are guarantees. So there's no sovereign guarantees, but there are third-party DFI guarantees that are being put in place that do cover some, and in some cases they cover off-taker risk. Some cases they cover political risk, and in some cases they will also cover devaluation risks to a certain extent, obviously. For as a medium and long-term scenario, I would say we're definitely seeing as these large projects, these large and economy-shifting projects come into online, we are hopefully going to see a valuation of our currency. So and that is I think it's still encouraging for IPPs signing PPAs and concession agreements on how to manage that risk there for the devaluation. But yes, there aren't, for example, I know maybe in other countries in the past where PPAs were signed in foreign currency. That is not the case anymore. PPAs are signed on although they're signed on the foreign currency, they're still being paid on local currency, giving and that risk always being there. Obviously, if you're doing business in meticais, receiving your income in meticais, but still then having to do business in a foreign exchange, and that risk is there. Absolutely.
Thanks, Ricardo. Indeed, it's an important aspect. Isaiah, would you like to comment on the topic of challenges and opportunities and possible solutions to the challenges related to IPPs?
Right. I think my two colleagues have highlighted, the challenges that we all face where there is changes in the currency, versus the US dollars. In our case, most of the PPAs that have been signed are in US dollars, and if it is with the power company, then they are paid in the local equivalent of the dollars. But for private sector, I mentioned earlier on that you either have your PPA with an exporting company, and then you're able to mitigate on the exchange risk there, and also we have situations whereby in our case we now have an auction system for our currency, which was not there before. And what we have seen is the increased amount of foreign currency that being traded on that auction system, and the fact that the currency which was obtaining in the parallel market, have also kind of stabilized and giving an indication that if that whole situation continues to hold, we might then have a real situation whereby you are able then to go and source your currency, even if you are paid in Zimbabwean dollars. But it's an area that we keep on monitoring and then make sure that at least one has to mitigate that risk when you do your project in the country. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So we have 5 more minutes, and so I think in those 5 remaining minutes, we can explore one more topic, which is quality. So like in Europe, in Africa, you're facing challenges related to quality, both equipment quality and service quality. And as a side note, I would like to mention here that you're also working with us in a new initiative that we just launched, the Africa Europe Operation and Maintenance Best Practice Task Force, as part of which we're developing best practices for operation and maintenance services for solar power plants that are located in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think that is a very meaningful, very interesting initiative and work, and we appreciate your participation in that work very much. So operation and maintenance is one aspect of quality. Of course, there are other important aspects, including installation quality, as well as the quality of equipment. So what are the main challenges in your countries, and what do your associations do to address those challenges when it comes to quality? For example, Ricardo, we talked earlier about the issue of counterfeit products in the renewable energy sector in Mozambique. So how do you address that?
Right, that's a great question, and thanks for SolarPower Europe for that initiative on the O&M guidelines. I think it does. I think that's the way to go, right? So we are as an African country, this is a new sector where we're going in. There's definitely confidence in the sector. We've had counterfeit solar panels coming in, counterfeit technology coming in, where we've seen that then discourages people to believe in the technology. Oh, solar panels don't work, or they only last 6 months, and so on. So we will be working. We have 2 partnerships actually. We have a partnership with the Industrial Institute of Maputo, that is to form technicians to address that question of the service of quality, to enable technicians, electricians, and so on to be able to upbring their capacity and their training on the renewable side, and be able to do proper installations that have a certificate from this industrial institute, but also work with the certification agency in Mozambique, where we're starting to now see a move towards and we've seen that on the biofuels, specifically on clean cook stoves, where there was all of a sudden clean cook stoves were appearing everywhere and made out of anything. So we're looking at certifying those. These companies are doing clean cook stoves and they're certified quality. Same thing for solar panels, same thing for solar home systems. So that's where we'll be moving on, to kind of have a stamp of certification, a stamp of quality, to assure that these products, although maybe not manufactured in Mozambique, have come in, have been tested by an accredited center, and have passed a certification process. We cannot afford to be in a sector where we go through it and we lose credibility, we lose confidence, and people will simply neglect it. So for us, that is at the forefront, and that's why we jumped at this opportunity of going on the guidelines of operation and maintenance of solar installations, and we will jump at any opportunity that comes about. And we've been working with the Energy German institution. We were creating these partnerships to make sure that there is this confidence, there is this at least a mechanism and a recognizable mechanism that these technologies do indeed work.
Thank you, Ricardo. Geoffrey, Isaiah, any closing remarks on the topic of quality?
Yes, regarding the operations and maintenance, I should also say that the O&M project for Solar Power Europe has just come at the right time for Zambia, because we're beginning to see an increase in the number of solar power plants that are coming up. And also the mini grid space is now developing. There are more and more mini grids that are coming. One area that has not started growing together is the O&M aspect. So beginning to look at O&M now is just the right time, because we're now going to have a lot more power plants coming. So it's a wonderful initiative, and the role of the Solar Industry Association is to make sure that we build capacity in terms of skills of doing O&M in large-scale power plants or mini grids. So we're very excited about this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey. And Isaiah, over to you. You have the last word.
Thank you. Equally excited as well by the the work that we working with yourselves on the O&M. It's coming at the right time as well in a developing market. But if one looks at the products themselves, we have standards for solar PVs. We have standards for solar thermal, but our only challenge is on the implementation and the enforcement side. That we working together with authorities to see how we can get the enforcement being carried out. In terms of regulations, there is also discussions underway at the moment to see whether we can have regulations on solar installers. There's also developments in terms of curriculum development to try and incorporate, some of these positions like solar installers in schools, so that at least we can build up the culture and the skills as we go forward in the sector itself. So it is a very topical area that we need to keep on looking at and addressing, because it certainly has a big impact on the sector if then there is failures of projects that are being done by either qualified people, or equally as well products that have been smuggled or that have come into the sector. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah, and thank you all for this very good discussion. Also, for the last point around quality, I think it's also a very important piece of information for also for international businesses looking to invest in your countries and to do business in your countries, to know that challenges related to quality are being addressed, and which of course also means that there will be local people and qualified people locally who will be able to build power plants, do the operation maintenance for power plants, and when it comes to the quality of equipment, same as well. So Ricardo, Isaiah, Geoffrey, thank you very much for today's session, for the good input presentations and the excellent discussion. It was very insightful, in my opinion. I enjoyed it, and also thank you on behalf of SolarPower Europe to Get Invest for making this session possible. So we will now end this session, and we will see the participants in 1 hour for the second deep dive discussion on 3 additional sub-Saharan solar markets: Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. So we will be back in 1 hour.